Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Review. I'm Phil Hargis. It's good to see you guys again. It's so exciting. The preseason action has finally started. We got kicked off with a Hall of Fame game last weekend, and now we're getting into the first full weekend of NFL preseason games. This is a time where you can really get the inside scoop on the guys that you can get in the middle to late rounds of your draft that can actually make a difference. Some of those sleepers out there, if you will. We're going to start tracking them right now, starting tonight and the entire weekend for the rest of the entire preseason, and let you know who these guys are going to be and how they can be the steals of your draft come draft day. It's so exciting right now. People are starting to draft right now, and the drafts will continue to go on now until the beginning of September. It's just such a great time of the year. Last week we had Michael Wardy on the show to kind of break down the quarterbacks and running backs. We had so much to talk about last week that we never even got to the wide receivers, the tight ends, kickers and defenses and the detail that we wanted to get into. So we're going to cover that for you tonight. It'll be awesome. We're probably going to start off. We're going to start off right away with the wide receivers and then go through those positions. And at the end of the show, if we have time, we didn't have time last week because we had so much stuff to talk about. We're going to try to get into break down some fantasy mock drafts that we've seen and let you know what's good and what's bad about these early rounds, mid rounds, late rounds. Who you can get, who you don't want to take that early, and what's being done. It'd be really exciting, but we do finally have back in the studio. He's been talking to you about hockey. He's been talking to you about golf, about all kinds of other sports, but not about football. We do have Robbie Castro back in the house for fantasy football for the first time this year. Robbie, welcome back to Fantasy Football Review, man.
I love the energy, man. It's been great. I can't wait. I'm real fired up for this season. It's not a watered-down product like last training camp was. Chris Johnson's not holding out like an idiot. Maurice Jones-Drew is. But
and Mike Wallace is another one too.
Yeah, well he'll be suited up soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know we kind of joke about it all the time. Like these guys just want a little breather. They don't want to go out there in the hot August heat and go to training camp. I mean, these guys are seasoned veterans. They really don't need to be there. Air quote emphasis on that one. They don't need to be there, and they don't want to be there because they know they can go on the step onto that field. Comes to the beginning of September and perform.
I don't see why not. I mean, they've been doing it for the last couple of years. Jones Drews is probably the same way. He's like, I don't want to get injured during training camp. I'm trying to work for a bigger contract here. So yeah, you kind of understand where both sides are coming from. But you know what? I'll tell you this, is that this season's going to be one of the better seasons, I think, just in terms of quality, in terms of, a lot of the teams, there's a lot of, very good teams, and then there's a lot of mediocre teams that could kind of leapfrog those very good teams. We'll see. I mean, we're going to dive right into it, but good things for 2012.
Yeah, a lot of good things. And a lot of that stuff comes down to schedule. We're going to have our special Strength of Schedule segment next week, so make sure you tune in back for the Strength of Schedule thing. Breaking down the schedule and figuring out what those matchups are going to be is critical to fantasy football drafting success. You got to be able to forecast who has the easier schedules. Maybe a guy like Tom Brady has an easier schedule than a guy like Aaron Rodgers. So maybe, you think it's a no-brainer to take Aaron Rodgers #1 overall. Maybe Tom Brady has a way easier schedule and could be the better pick of that draft. We'll get to that stuff next week. Make sure you tune in for that one. But Robbie, we had Mike Wardy on the show. I know you weren't able to join us last week in studio. You were actually holding out in contract negotiations for the show,
But it actually, they stalled last week, and they offered me way more money than you on Monday. So
we pay top dollar on the show, man. I can't believe you would hold out for that long on us, man. But we gave you a pretty fair and equitable deal, and we're glad to have you back in studio for probably your 5th or 6th season here on Fantasy Sports Review. And of course, do not forget about Doug Koch. We'll have him joining us during the course of the season, as well as the lovely Natalie Gerson and Clara Markowski will be back with us. In addition, we have Steve Mullen is back for the 11th season of Fantasy Sports Review, back there directing the show like nobody else here at FPA could do here. Steve, it's great to have you back in the studio there with your, knock them dead directing skills there, man. It's great to have you back. We're going to have our work cover. And Nikki Grant also, we can't forget about her. Nikki will be back bringing you the weather reports every single week. It's going to be exciting to have her, Robbie. Let's get right back into the fantasy football stuff. We got into a lot of the quarterbacks and running backs last week on the show. We're not going to go over that. No reason to cover all that stuff.
Yeah.
We know who those guys are going to be, but the wide receivers is an area of your fantasy draft where you can really set your team apart. I mean, there are guys that will get a lot of receptions and a lot of touchdowns. Calvin Johnson was the #1 wide receiver last year. We see this time and time again. There's a guy that emerges the previous year as the #1 wide receiver, but he never performs up to those expectations. Can Calvin Johnson do that this year?
I don't know. You know what? I like Calvin Johnson, but the durability kind of scares me a little bit.
The Madden curse?
That's one of the factors. I'm telling you, man, I believe in it. I mean, years have shown, the last 10 have shown that, that is definitely a curse. I'm going to stay away from Calvin Johnson. I'm going to pick up a guy like Larry Fitzgerald. I know that the quarterback position in Arizona is a little unsettled with your boy John Skeleton and Kevin Cobb. But with the emergence of Malcolm Floyd and being their first-round pick this past season, I think that Larry Fitzgerald, I would love to take this guy, especially if you're in a PPR league. Guy catches everything. Guy can break the long touchdowns. I like L. Fitz. But yeah, Calvin Johnson's a good option too. So don't draft him too high. Be wary of the Madden jinx.
Yeah, it's something that you definitely have to be concerned with. And plus, the guys from the previous season that have those career years, they just always fall off the next year. It's proven. We talk about it time and time again on the show. Calvin Johnson's a guy I'd love to have on my team, but I'm not going to pay the price it's going to take to get him. He's probably getting drafted in the top 4 to 7 range in almost every single draft after your top 5 stud. Top 3 running backs and your top 2 quarterbacks are gone, then Calvin Johnson's starting to fall off the board. Some guys are even taking him above those guys because of the awesomeness of his position. We saw last year with Andre Johnson. I mean, he was that go-to guy.
Right.
And what did he do? He finished in the middle of the pack. Anyway, I think that being said, Andre Johnson could represent a little bit of value. He's still going to be one of the top 3 to 5 wide receivers off the board. And this is a team that is Super Bowl bound. You want to have a guy like that on your fantasy football team that's going to be on a high-scoring, potent offense like the Houston Texans.
I would like them too, but he's had his knee scoped twice in the last 2 years. He kind of scares me. He had that groin injury last season. These wide receivers, kind of a dime a dozen. If you look at it in terms of value, there's a lot. You have your 3 great wide receivers, and then everyone else kind of falls off the map. I would love to have a guy like Larry Fitzgerald on my team just to carry me throughout the whole entire year, and you don't have to worry about that because his productivity is going to be there, and he's durable enough. He's going to play every single game. Now that I just said that, he probably is not, but I think Calvin Johnson, kind of with that schedule, Detroit plays teams that in their division they have good secondaries. You play for the Arizona Cardinals. You're in the West. Not so good secondaries. You got to look at that too. They play those teams
49ers
twice a year.
tough,
Well, the
man.
49ers are good, but Larry Fitzgerald always plays his best against the best.
You saw what they did to your Saints last year in the playoffs too, by the way. Yeah, there's other guys, Robbie. And so then after that elite category there, you have Johnson, Fitzgerald, Johnson. I think it does fall off quite a bit, and then you really have to use some discretion and establish some preference for the guys that you're going to want in that next grouping. I mean, how can you have number 5 and 6, Roddy White and Julio Jones? It is so unrealistic to think that those guys are going to finish that high up, paired as a tandem.
There's no way.
Matt Ryan, a guy that's not going to throw more than 2 or 2.5 touchdowns.
They still have Michael Turner in the backfield. Remember that.
And yeah, they do, but he's fallen off, man. So they're going to be more dependent on their passing game, but they do, and then they can mix it up with Jack Wiz Rogers. There's no doubt about that.
That's great. I'm looking at the first sheet. Greg Jennings, Wes Welker, and Hakeem Nicks. Those aren't bad guys to have in your team. Percy Harvin, kind of stay away from injuries, unreliable quarterback.
He's ranked way too high on that list. We talked about that last week.
Ranked way too hard. Victor Cruz, I like him a lot, but you also have Hakeem Nicks, that tandem. Watch out for a guy that's not on the sheet. That's ranked number 13 is Demaryius Thomas. I love this guy. Sleeper with Peyton Manning. Everyone's saying Peyton Manning's going to have a bad season. I disagree. I like Demaryius Thomas. You could probably get him in the 3rd round, which would be an excellent value pick.
Yeah, but we talked about that last week, Robbie. I mean, you still have Eric Decker to deal with, too. I mean, one of those guys is going to be emerged. It doesn't necessarily have to be Demaryius Thomas. He's still fresh in our mind last year.
One concussion away from not playing for this whole entire season. So
is Peyton Manning for throwing him the ball, too.
Well, that's true, but I think their offensive line in Denver is way better than people think. So
yeah, I mean, they don't have any running game, though, still.
That's great. Throw the ball, air it out. You know what I mean?
I know it's going to be a lot easier to bum rush Peyton Manning, if you ask me. Brandon Marshall gets a change of scenery. He goes over to Chicago. He's reunited with Jay Cutler there.
I like that, too. Brandon Marshall played for a not-so-great team in Miami, had a lot of problems off the field. He comes to Chicago, has already had a chemistry with Jay Cutler once before. This offense is now geared towards the passing game, even though they re-signed Matt Forte. They're looking to do big things in Chicago, and what better way to start with a guy like Brandon Marshall at the helm, being one of their better top options. So I like him too as well. Another guy too that's in the middle of the pack is Deshaun Jackson. Terrible season last year, didn't really perform to expectations, but I really think this guy's on point. I like Deshaun Jackson to rebound and have a good season too. Miles Austin right now is for the Cowboys. I would kind of stay away from him. He's been dinged up a little bit in preseason. I think that Tony Romo is going to have an awesome season, but You also have Des Bryant and Kevin Ogletree as well, and then they might get Plaxico Burress, so we don't know.
There are these guys that perennially, we talk about the oscillators on the show all the time, the guys that have a great year, everybody overdrafts them the next year, and then they fall off, and then the next year they come back and they do well again. Those types of guys you were just talking about, Robbie, are exactly the same thing. A guy like Deshaun Jackson could oscillate back and have a better season. He was way overdrafted. Some people were taking him in the top 4 to 6 area last year. Another guy like that will be ready to oscillate could well be somebody like Stevie Johnson, who had a great year 2 years ago. He was okay last year. Didn't suck, but more so towards the end of last year, he came back on. And then Dwayne Bowe, after that huge season 2 years ago, he might be ready to bounce back and have another top tier season here. And going down the list there, I mean, there's a couple other guys that I see to jump out. Antonio Brown just got that big payday. I don't like to see the guys coming off the big payday getting ranked that high. Now he's not getting ranked that high. He's ranked 30th. But right now he's the only show in town for Pittsburgh. I mean, we know Mike Wallace will eventually show up there, and that's not really going to be a huge concern. But the last guy, man, this is your boy here. We actually have two guys, unless they're both highlighted there in yellow. But Brandon Lloyd going up there in New England. I mean, does he have potential to be put up Randy Moss kind of numbers there?
I think so. I mean, I don't see why not, but he's also going to play third wheel to the tandem tight ends and Gronkowski and Hernandez, and then Wes Welker. So maybe not the production of Randy Moss 3 seasons ago, but it could be a guy that you could have on your team to get you over that hump and carry you into the playoffs. I'm also looking at a few other guys, like Denarius Moore for the Oakland Raiders. I like him a lot, especially with Carson Palmer, him being their number one option, because now Lewis Murphy's gone.
And Chaz Jones is gone, too.
And your boy Chaz Jones is gone, too. So I like Denarius Moore a lot. But also, I mean, you look at Reggie Wayne. I know, he's got a rookie quarterback throwing him the football, but he's their top target. And, Andrew Luck's going to find his yards wherever he can get them, and that's going to be their top guy. So in a PPR league, I love Reggie Wayne. Don't be scared that Andrew Luck's throwing you the football. He's one of the better rookies come out of the draft in prior seasons.
And it's a team that's going to be, and because of their terrible defense, they're going to be involved in a lot of high-scoring games where their offense will be given lots of opportunities. Even if it's garbage time, they're going to be getting Andrew Luck as much experience throwing the ball.
And it will be garbage time. That's even better. That's like what Cam Newton did last season in the fourth quarter. He had probably, I'd say easily, almost 2,000 yards passing in the fourth quarter.
They were in some pretty exciting games at the start of that year, too.
They were.
Where they were forced to come back from behind, too.
Exactly.
So the one last guy we have to talk about here is Vincent Jackson. Comes over from San Diego. They take away Phillip Rivers, second most valuable target, because he's still got Antonio Gates, who's supposedly having a really awesome preseason here. He goes down to Tampa Bay, so now Josh Freeman has somebody to throw to.
Yeah, that's huge as well. I mean, Vince Jackson was one of the carriers on that offense for the Chargers for the last 3 seasons, and then he gets a kind of a change of scenery, a breath of fresh air. Ahead of myself a little bit with Josh Freeman. Josh Freeman, again, he had a sophomore slump, but I like him in that new offense, new head coach, new running backs. Exciting times for Tampa Bay as they look to improve from their mediocre 5-11 season last year.
Okay, let's move into the sleeper wide receiver list. This is positions 33 to 50 on the draft list, Robbie. I know at the top of this list is Darius Haywood-Bay. You talk about this guy all the time. You're a Maryland boy. Is he going to be a breakout wide receiver?
I love that. I mean, he's great. I think with another season with Carson Palmer, you get a guy that's now been in training camp. He's been working out with Palmer on the reg. I like Haywood-Bay to have a good season. Stay away from Sidney Rice. You don't know who their quarterback's going to be in Seattle.
Well, we know it's going to be Matt Flynn.
Well, it could
it's
be.
It's going to be Matt Flynn.
It could be, but also Robert Meacham in San Diego. I mean, here's a team that desperately needs some playmakers on offense, and he's one of them. Vince Jackson's gone. This guy kind of comes right into the mold in the thick of things, and I like him to really have a productive season for San Diego. Also, you look at Pierre Garçon for the Redskins. They're predicting Robert Griffin III to have a great season. If he's going to have a great season throwing the football, he's going to look to air it out to Pierre Garçon, especially deep. If you're playing in a one of those bonus touchdown leagues, why not pick up a guy like this in your 5th, 6th round? I mean, it can only help your team as little as it can hurt it. But another guy I don't like on this list is Greg Little at 39. I stay away from him because he's unproven. He's got Brandon Weeden throwing him the football. Again, I don't like that situation in Cleveland.
Look how far Anquan Bolden has fallen.
But
man.
yeah, that is
so far down the list.
And they have Torrey Smith ahead of him, which is just unbelievable to me.
Well, he was pretty hot last year, man.
He had some great games, but and in terms of yards, yes, he had great a lot of awesome fantasy value points in that regard. But Anquan Bolden's still Anquan Bolden, guy that's going to catch at least 80 balls. He's one of their top targets in Baltimore. More of an in-between type player, meaning that he's only going to catch footballs in between the 5 to 15 yard marker. So He's not going to stretch the field with like Torrey Smith would. But again, a guy in the red zone, that guy, I want to be throwing Anquan Bolden the football inside the 20 any day. So, but you look at like other guys like Justin Blackmon. Again, I would stay away from this guy. I don't think he's going to have the same success that A.J. Green had because he's got Blaine Gabbert throwing the football, and that's just not. When you have Blaine Gabbert throwing you the football, you're in trouble.
Yeah, well, Robbie's telling you the guys not to draft. The guys I'm going to tell you to draft are these guys. Michael Crabtree is a guy that has we keep waiting for this guy to really break out and have, his brilliant season here. This could be the season he does it here. Alex Smith has matured as a quarterback. And then another guy like Robbie is sort of a really deep sleeper here, especially should something awful happen to Megatron, is a guy like Titus Young to step up and be like to be sort of a reliable guy that Stafford can throw to. Titus Young can put up some numbers and can be a really good sleeper. And then Kenny Britt with all his problems, I think Nathan Washington in Tennessee has a chance to put up some really good fantasy numbers this season.
Sure, because they'll be playing from behind.
And the big question mark here is Randy Moss. Can Randy Moss come back and be the NFL type of receiver and score 8 to 10 touchdowns?
If you have a team that lacks. If you're looking at your team as a whole in the first 10 rounds, and you're like, oh, I need to add a key piece down the stretch, Randy Moss could be that guy. But I would not take him. I would not take him the first 10 if I was playing, because you just don't know. I mean, he took a year off last season, and he's playing. Alex Smith is his quarterback. Alex Smith is a great player, but again, the fear of the unknown. If you're expecting him to have if you're trying to be the guy to say, hey, this guy's gonna have a good season, look the other way. I'd be. I don't
He's supposed to have a pretty good preseason so far.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, he's been out for a season already. 2 seasons ago, he played terribly. So.
Well, what about Terrell Owens in Seattle then?
Again, I would wait till like the 15th, 16th round. Again, just take a late flyer on those two guys.
Don't draft them and then maybe look for them on the waiver wire or something like that.
Exactly. That'd be the don't waste a pick when you can get someone else in better value.
But
so
it's going to be expensive to pick those guys up if they come out in week 1 and 2 and have some big games.
Right.
Okay, now we saw some unprecedented things happening from the tight end position last year with the seasons that Jimmy Graham and Rob Gronkowski put up. So those guys are skyrocketing up in the drafts. I mean, I'm hearing about these guys getting drafted in the early second round. I mean, this is
early second round. I would take both of those guys in the first round.
You would take them both in the first round?
Absolutely. If you're playing a 12-team or 14-team league, there's no way that Rob Gronkowski should fall to 13 in the second round. There's no way. Especially in a PPR league or a obviously touchdowns are worth 6 points. It's huge. You want to get a home run hitter like Rob Gronkowski. I mean, the guy set the NFL record for yards and touchdowns last season as a tight end in his second season with the Patriots. Imagine what he's going to do in the third season with the New England Patriots.
This is nonsense, and I'll tell you why.
Oh, yeah, right.
You're going to take those guys in the first or second round, when in the 5th or 6th round you can get a guy like Aaron Hernandez, Antonio Gates, Jermichael Finley, Brandon Pettigrew. Those guys, you don't even need to take those guys that high. Fred Davis will be there probably in the 9th or 10th round. Tony Gonzalez still put up great numbers last year. Look at that list of tight ends from 1 to 14. There's a guy that's going to produce for you on that list. You don't need to draft Jimmy Graham 10th or Rob Gronkowski 13th for crying out loud. We could be having a wide receiver or a running back in that same position. It's just nonsense.
They're each going to grab at least, the very minimum, if they stay healthy, at least 15 touchdowns between the both of them. And you're talking about Fred Davis, Brandon Pettigrew, they're going to catch maybe 6 touchdowns all season. That's the difference between 10 touchdowns right there. You know what I mean? So I like Jimmy Graham. I think that I really think
you'd rather have him than like a guy like Ryan Matthews?
Oh yes, I would definitely have him over a guy like Ryan Matthews. He's been terrible. Matthews is Mr. Fumbles.
He was in the top 10 last year.
Yeah, towards the latter part of the season because they had one of the worst starts to a season San Diego Chargers have in many
They always
years.
do have terrible starts to season.
Yeah, well they weren't running the football effectively the first 10 games.
Oh man,
they weren't even playing. They
just
weren't
when
even
I thought you were
box.
starting to learn things on this show, Rob. You come out and say you're going to take Jimmy Graham.
I'm
in the
telling
first
you,
round.
I would take one of those guys in the first round. I'm telling you. Okay. You want a guy that's going to catch 6 touchdowns or 16 touchdowns as your tight end.
You're going to give up on Vernon Davis, man?
I'm not giving up on anybody. I'm just saying, if they're there, take them.
Okay, and then kickers, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. We're going to get into our mock draft. The kickers are pretty much the same thing. Just circle the top 10 teams that you'd like out there for to make the playoffs. Look to grab a kicker off one of those teams. There's really no sleepers or anything you can really try to catch there. I mean, guys like like Gostkowski and Akers, they're consistently studs at the top of the list. Everybody knows it, and they draft them accordingly. Usually overdraft them a little bit. I mean, look for a guy like on a high score. I'd love Mason Crosby there at number 6, and maybe a guy like Bullock at number 7 there for the Houston. I mean, these guys are going to put up some points. Even Dan Bailey could be a good one for you there with the Dallas Cowboys, capable of putting up a lot of points. And Cundiff is always a stud too. We'll see how he comes back from that injury. We're not going to spend a lot of time on team defenses here. As demonstrated last year, I mean, you can pick up teams on the waiver wire almost every single week. Play matchups. The key to the team defenses is to play those matchups where the defenses that are out there on the waiver wire have a really good matchup against like a really awful offense and offensive line that particular week. You know, I nailed this last year. Seattle had a bunch of really weak opponents going into the end of the season last year. I picked those guys up. They were starting scoring defensive touchdowns against these terrible offenses, and it almost won me the title. I lost on some crazy tiebreaker at the end of the season, but that's how you play the defenses. Don't worry about drafting a team defense like the 49ers or Ravens or Bears or even the Patriots are always good, and the Steelers, people like those guys. I'm not going to draft a defense that high, Robbie.
No, I wouldn't either. Don't even stash it away.
All right, man. So we have a copy of a mock draft here from, this is old, but they're still fun to look at anyway here from the Pro Football Weekly Fantasy Football Magazine here. We don't endorse them, but they do have some pretty good reference material in here, and the guys do a good job year in and year out putting together their magazine here. Of course, it's very old. It comes out around Memorial Day, but we're looking at it here in middle of August. Their draft, this draft we're looking at here, the first pick overall was Aaron Rodgers over Arian Foster. Robbie, in this draft here, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks going in the first round. Rodgers, Breeze, Brady, Newton, and Stafford. What do you think about this craziness? Is it just really turned into a quarterback-heavy draft?
I don't know.
People forgot about the keys to running backs and receivers?
You saw last year, Cam Newton, pretty much just skyrocketed every single week, scoring like 30-plus points a game.
Right, you could get him off the waiver wire. Why take one in the first round?
Well, that's an exception to the rules. I don't think that will happen this season. But you look at a guy like Aaron Rodgers. Is he going to outperform what he did last year? No, probably not. You're going to look at Drew Brees. Is he going to outperform what he did last season? I don't know. Robert Meacham's gone. Tom Brady as well. You look at him. He's got awesome, wide receiver, tight end tandem, but no really big run game. And then Matthew Stafford at the end of the first round. I wouldn't take him at the end of the first round. Like I said, I'd take a guy like Jimmy Graham or Rob Gronkowski.
Okay, well, yeah, let's see where those guys got drafted here. Gronkowski, middle of the third round, and Jimmy Graham went in. Shoot, dude, he didn't even go until I must be missing him, but he must have gone in the 4th round here or something. But I don't see it, man. But we asked Wardy the question on the show last week. I mean, if you have that number 1 overall pick, are you keen a guy on Rodgers or Breeze, or are you going to take Foster?
I would take Arian Foster. I mean, you
have to take
have
Foster.
It's kind of like 3 years ago when Adrian Peterson had that awesome rookie season. You kind of had to take AP again in the second go around and make him your first overall pick. Jones Drew, I remember 2 or 3 years ago went real high. Chris Johnson 2 years ago as well. Last year look what he did. He fell big time because he didn't sign a contract, and he kind of paid the price for it if you took him in the first round like I did.
Chris Johnson's falling into the second round of the drafts this year. Is this the guy you're going to try to avoid, or does that represent good value?
No, I think that's great value if you can get him in the second round. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you should definitely go get him in the second round.
If you can stockpile a good balance of running backs and wide receivers in your first couple rounds, and then a Jimmy Graham or a Rob Gronkowski that they have here is available, you got to take them.
Okay, well, this guy had the decision right here to take Trent Richardson or Chris Johnson with his pick at the start of the second round. Which one of those 2 guys would you take?
I'd take Chris Richardson. I'd take Chris Richardson.
Take both. Yeah, they should get married.
Chris Johnson only because Trent Richardson's seen a knee specialist this week. Actually, I think tomorrow he's having his knee scoped. That's not a good sign. Chris Johnson's looking to have a rebound. He just signed a huge fat contract. He wants to live up to that title, that billing. He's apparently having a real successful training camp. So with that underneath his belt and his legs finally underneath him, that Chris Johnson, I would definitely take him over a guy like Trent Richardson. But Matt Forte, they have him going, early second round as well. I've always been a big fan of this guy because he can catch the football and he can run, and he's put up some monster games year in and year out. And now with that big contract again, he sort of has that safety net. Okay, well, I can go out and do some things without really risking injuries. So now maybe I'll show this team how I can perform day in and day out.
Yeah, but aren't you concerned that Peyton Hillis might vulture some of his touchdowns at all, or some of his catches?
I'm not worried. I wouldn't be worried about Peyton Hillis. He runs like he is crap in his pants. Just being honest.
This guy could be rebounding from the Madden curse last year.
Well, we'll see.
All right, man. Let's move on to the third round here. You start to see guys like Michael Turner that are falling back. Fred Jackson coming back off the injury. There's your Gronkowski and Graham. Those guys went back to back. There's where Graham was hiding out. And then a guy like Doug Martin, the rookie in the third round.
If I look at Michael Vick in the second pick taken in the third round, if you have one of those picks, you have got to signal. You have to get a wide receiver running back first 2 rounds. And if you can get a Michael Vick in the third round, oh my God! I mean, just think about what kind of numbers he can put up in his second year at the helm as the Eagles starting quarterback. I mean, the guy's scary good. He's electrifying. He can run the football. He can throw. He has dangerous weapons on offense. And I really think this Philadelphia Eagles team is out to prove something. So he's going to have an MVP type season. If you can get this guy in the third round, oh man! I mean, you might as well call yourself playoff bound already.
I know, man. The NFC has some pretty hard schedules, man. And even if Vic does put those kind of numbers, man, you're probably only still going to get 11, 12 games max out of that guy, I think. Then we see our boy Roy Halou down here in the 5th round. Is this a guy that can be depended upon in the Mike Shanahan offense as a go-to running back just to get the bulk of those carries and
here's the thing.
be an RB2?
Well, here's the thing. You have Evan Royster, and then you also have Tim Hightower come back from injury. So you're talking about sharing the load there. They're definitely playing 3 running backs this season starting out. There's no doubt in my mind.
Save yourself a headache and don't draft the
I would
Redskins.
just stay away. It's kind of like the Patriots as well as Shane Vereen and Stephen Ridley. Stay away from those 2 guys unless you can pick them up in like the 10th round or 11th round. And it's kind of like pick your poison, flip a coin, who you're going to take.
All right, Robbie, and we here you go. Vernon Davis in the 5th rounder. You can have your boy Jimmy Graham or Gronkowski in the 1st round. Same thing here. Taking a quarterback in the 1st round. You can still get a guy like Tony Romo here in the 5th round. That's a great quarterback. And your differences between Breeze and Stafford or Rodgers or something, Brady, it'll be something, but it won't be that much that you're going to lose from Romo versus the value of the running back or the receiver in the 1st round. So still great value can be had in the 5th or 6th round drafting. Quarterbacks holding out for that long. Here we go, Robbie. Sean Green here in the 6th round. We've been waiting on this guy to perform like the guy in the playoffs from a couple years ago. Is this going to be the year where he steps up? Tebow is going to be running the ball there now.
I don't like that Jets offense at all. I'd say stay away.
All right, man. Well, listen, dude, that was a good breakdown of the first half of the draft. We got through the wide receivers and the tight ends. This is something we needed to do and catch you up. Next week, we will go over some strength of schedule stuff, and we'll continue to break down mock drafts we hear of. If you guys have a draft you want us to send them to, send it to Phil@fantasyreview.com. We'll take a look at your draft, and we'll talk about it here on there. That would be really fun and very exciting. It'd be great to have you. Robbie, good to have you back on the show again. And you guys, thanks for watching Fantasy Football Review. Steve, thanks for directing. And we look forward to an awesome preseason. We're going to have all kinds of analysis for you based on these preseason games, and we're looking forward to doing it for you here on Fantasy Sports Review. Goodbye, everybody.